Jack Nicholson plays the abrasive Teamsters boss Jimmy Hoffa in Hoffa, one of 5 new movies we'll be reviewing this week on Siskel and Ebert, and we'll also review other major holiday pictures, including Chaplin and new movies starring Susan Sarandon, Nick Nolte, and Ice-T. I'm Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times.
And I'm Gene Siskel of the Chicago Tribune. Our first film is Hoffa, a film that owes as much of its appeal to Jack Nicholson's performance as the feisty, corrupt labor leader as to Danny DeVito's direction. Jimmy Hoffa built the truck-driving Teamsters into America's largest and most powerful labor union by traditional methods, strikes and solidarity, and also by working deals with mobsters to give him juice against corporate America. He served time in the slammer for jury fixing. He was a man, obviously, of great contradictions. This film is weakest, I think, in its opening scenes of heroic labor actions led by the young James R. Hoffa. Everything looks too pretty.
We are going to hold together in good order, and we are going to get what we came down here for!
But the movie gets rolling when Hoffa begins making deals with mobsters. Together, they'll develop a pension fund for corrupt investments.
Questa è la questione.
This is the question.
Perché non ammazzo questo?
Why shouldn't he kill you?
Se fosse nel posto mio, cosa faresti?
He said if you were in his place, what would you do?
Tell him he gives me a cup of coffee, I'll answer his questions.
In a fascinating subplot, we see Hoffa combat his longtime nemesis, Robert Kennedy, here as Attorney General. Bobby wants to put Jimmy behind bars.
The Justice Department has plenty on you, Mr. Hoffa.
You don't impress me, and your office don't impress me, and your family don't impress me. Bunch of rum runners. And I don't need $300 million, and my brother-elected president will whop your ass.
Director DeVito also plays Hoffa's right-hand man in the film, here pleading with Hoffa's golf-playing replacement Frank Fitzsimmons to help spring Jimmy out of jail. The golf course setting is a far cry from Hoffa's world of violence-plagued strikes.
I looked for you over at the office. They told me you were here.
How's Jimmy?
Well, Fitz, you'd know if you went to see him.
How is he?
You got to get him out. He's not well. He's not doing well. You got to get him out of there.
And there we see some of the tragic arc of the American labor movement from the picket line to the golf course for the executives in the labor movement. Nicholson's performance is really quite amazing in the film also. He has the heft and stolid quality of Hoffa down pat, and I give DeVito a lot of credit for not romanticizing Hoffa too much. He was effective and corrupt, and both qualities are given play here. I liked his film, Hoffa.
I liked it too. I was amazed to find that it didn't take me any time at all to adjust to Jack Nicholson as Hoffa. Usually when you have a big star, it takes you 5 or 10 minutes to figure, okay, this is the person he's playing.
The opening image is perfect.
He was Hoffa from the first shot. And another thing I liked about DeVito's work and the screenplay by David Mamet is that they didn't try to turn this into a standard biopic. Here was a man who lived and breathed and died labor, and it's amusing in a way that there's almost just a tiny aside to indicate that he even had a wife and a daughter. He has no domestic life. He's always out there with the cigarettes and the coffee and the cigars and the closed room and the deals and the negotiations. It's all he cared about.
Now, did you have the same reaction I had to the two parts of the film, the more rough and tumble corrupt era, if you will, the more modern era, and then the old-time stuff? Didn't you think that was old-fashioned?
Well, of course, some of the old-time stuff is going to be picturesque. You have those old trucks, and you have the old signs for the gas stations and the old brand names and so forth. But no, it seemed to me that even at the beginning, all it was a lot of, for him, a lot of real hard work. It's hard to see how Jimmy Hoffa, at any point during this film anyway, had very much fun with what he was doing.
Oh, I think he liked his feisty quality. I think he loved it.
Well, it's a good movie. And our next movie is Trespass, sort of a cross between Treasure of the Sierra Madre and Night of the Living Dead, although not exactly in the same league with either one of those films. The movie tells the story of a couple of Arkansas firemen who gain possession of a map indicating that a hoard of stolen gold church treasure may be hidden in an East St. Louis warehouse. They go to the warehouse, and sure enough, they find the gold, along with some unwanted company.
What are you doing here? I live here. What you think, you dumbass? I've been hiding in the back ever since you come. What's your name? Bradley. Well, guess what, Mr. Bradley? You're trespassing here.
That's Bill Paxton from One False Move as one of the treasure hunters, along with partner William Sadler, and Art Evans is a homeless man who stumbles across them. This abandoned site has attracted other company, including a street gang, that chooses it for an execution.
You got to slow this down. This situation does have an explanation.
The gang members realize they've been seen.
The man asked you a question. What the hell are you doing here?
Nothing. I'm just here. I'm not looking for trouble.
Is that right?
And the question becomes, can these guys escape from the factory with the gold and their lives? Trespass was directed by Walter Hill, a male action specialist whose credits include 48 Hours and The Warriors, and who knows his way blindfolded around a plot like this. The movie is well crafted, but what bothered me was it seemed like too much of a setup. I never believed the situation of the characters were real. They seemed manufactured out of parts of other movies, and so it was more of an exercise than a story to get me involved.
Yeah, I didn't think that the Southern guys, the firemen, were frankly either funny enough or funky enough to be interesting and compel me. And also, I thought that the gang characters were pretty standard issue material.
Yeah.
And the business about the one guy who's shooting video, for a lot of different technical reasons, that didn't make any sense at all. It was just a little technique within the film to make it seem more contemporary. So I did think that basically these people were cliches brought together.
Oddly enough, the character of the recluse who's living in the factory is the only one who seems to be halfway motivated in a recognizable human way. Coming up next, a biography of the comic actor and filmmaker upon whose small shoulders the American film industry was built.
Chaplin!
Don't you want to know who I am?
I have no interest whatsoever in who you are. Mr. Chaplin.
That's Robert Downey Jr., quite effective at recreating the on- and off-stage personalities of Charles Spencer Chaplin, the Little Tramp. Richard Attenborough's biographical film moves and fits and starts. We don't need all of the titles that tell us exactly when and where the events are taking place, but I'm still recommending Chaplin because I think it's a good portrait of a political artist under fire late in his career. We first meet Charlie Chaplin in England as a variety show player. He travels to America and is brought to Hollywood by producer Mack Sennett, Dan Aykroyd, who can't believe the young man standing before him is the same performer who played an old drunk in a music hall show he saw. One of Chaplin's off-screen weaknesses was young women. Here his friend, legendary screen star Douglas Fairbanks Sr., played by Kevin Kline in a terrific performance, warns him against his self-destructive behavior.
You are a truly strange fellow, Charles. A young man of what, 29? And who's this fellow escorting? Why, Mildred Harris, that intellectual giant of 16 who still sucks a thumb.
Another strong character is Chaplin's older brother, Sidney, played by Paul Reese. He becomes the manager of Chaplin's empire, and together they get their working-class mother released from a mental home in England and bring her to America.
I've dreamed of this moment for years.
Oh, this is America, Mum. This is where your dreams come true.
The film also goes on to cover Chaplin's political activism in the 30s, the best part of the movie, and how he offends J. Edgar Hoover, who will hound him after he becomes head of the FBI. These are some of my favorite scenes in the movie because we can study Chaplin's face as it literally loses its laugh lines. Maybe it should surprise no one that in a movie about an entertainment genius, the most fascinating characters, the ones that we can really get into, are the supporting players who we know the least. Faults and all, I still like Chaplin.
I can't recommend it. In fact, I thought it was a surprisingly bad movie, and I've been looking at a lot of original Chaplin films recently, and the guy was a genius. And Robert Downey is a genius in this movie at playing Chaplin.
That's one good thing.
Downey was ready to play Chaplin in any movie that anybody made, and Richard Attenborough has made a very bad film because this filmmaker has not focused on the fact that he's making a movie about a filmmaker. It's all of this stuff about social life and parties and all of the girls that he dated and all of the women that he married. It's like a National Enquirer story about Chaplin. There's not a single sequence in this film, like the ones that we saw, for example, in Guilty by Suspicion, that shows how directors and editors work on a moviola in order to make a piece of film work. And we know that Chaplin rehearsed for hours, that he did the same take 20, 30, 50, 100 times, that he spent days and days in the editing room to make those films. And this movie kind of indicates that it was just all genius, and he just kind of was inspired.
No,
and that's why he was so great.
No, I don't think so,
And the political
Roger.
stuff is all murky too, Gene. It doesn't really level with us.
I think it isn't murky at all. First, I'll take that part. The political stuff, I think, is very clear. The guy was suspected, he was basically suspected of being a communist, and offended Hoover, who used his sexual proclivities, Chaplin's, to try and get him out of the country. That's number one. I think it was very direct and clear on that. Second, in terms of the movie stuff, it would have been a better film if it had done some of the things you say. But there is a long sequence with Mack Sennett where we see the effort that is required in getting the film right. There's a long scene there.
It wasn't.
Well, it was.
But you and I know enough about how movies are really made to know that even the scene that you're referring to was really faked for the mass audience and wasn't done in a way that it would have been done if a real movie were being made.
It shows improvisation on Chaplin's part, and Sennett having the smarts to let the guy go with his thing.
That's what I mean. It's like Chaplin immediately comes up with something and Sennett says, boy, that's great. I mean, that's not how Chaplin achieved his effects. He did it through a lot of thought, a lot of work.
The film would have been better if it had done some of the things you said.
Okay, when we come back, Susan Sarandon and Nick Nolte play parents who cannot learn to be patient when their child is dying of a rare disease. Lorenzo's Oil is next.
We are not asking, Doctor, for your anguish or your applause. We are asking merely for a little courage.
This science of medicine, you know, it's not like physics. There's no mathematical certainty. And because we deal with human beings who suffer, it can appear heartless.
I know.
Nick Nolte there in a scene from Lorenzo's Oil, arguing with a scientist played by Peter Ustinov about an approach Nolte thinks might help to cure his son of a rare and fatal disease of the nervous system. Ustinov is sympathetic, but he argues that these things take time. And time, of course, is the one thing the boy, Lorenzo, does not have. The movie is based on a true story of parents who defied and amazed the medical establishment by finding a treatment for the disease based on such a simple thing as olive oil. Susan Sarandon plays Nolte's wife, and the couple finds that even other parents of sick children are afraid to offend the doctors.
We are merely asking you to disseminate information.
You're even going to teach the doctors back where Loretta and me come from? We call that arrogance.
Arrogance.
The disease is named adrenoleukodystrophy, or ALD, and it affects only little boys, paralyzing their nervous systems. The parents of some of the victims are in an uproar when they learn that the couple has had sensational results with their revolutionary oil treatment.
You're not going to get any insurance company and any government to support you unless you have the approval. And the only way to get the approval is through thorough testing.
That's what they told the AIDS people about AZT, but they fought for it and they got it.
Because they were dying. You didn't have time to wait for dying.
I had a loan yesterday. I want that oil.
The parents put their lives on hold to be at Lorenzo's bedside, and Sarandon's performance is heartbreaking as she demands almost superhuman performance from her son's nurses.
Well, I'm paid to nurse, not read stories.
And you've decided that his mind doesn't need as much nurturing as his body?
What mind?
Lorenzo's Oil is the kind of movie that starts slow and then gathers enormous power, sweeping you along to a conclusion that is all the more affecting because the film is based on fact. I know that the story of this disease and this treatment is an incredible exception, that most diseases are not cured just because somebody is stubborn and has a bright idea. But the story of Lorenzo and his parents is incredible all the same. It takes on a special meaning at a time when AIDS and cancer patients are also obsessed by what they see as foot-dragging by a complacent medical establishment. The movie is an emotional and intellectual triumph and the performances by Sarandon and Nolte are risky and courageous.
Well, I'll take one exception with the last thing you said. The performance by Nolte may be courageous because he has to put on this Italian accent, but it is not a good performance. I think it's a mistake there. Every time he spoke in this film, I winced. I don't think it's very good. I think it was a mistake to try and force him into that accent completely. At the same time, you're quite right about the film. It does have a building steam quality to it. You start out and you think, this is really strange. Then you realize, if you don't know it going in, that it's a true story. You figure this has to be a true story, because who would make a movie about this subject? Yeah. And then you just get caught up in the desire. And I think it plays on a very common thing that's heartfelt, and that is an attack on a child of a disease is as awful as things get. And so you just watch with your eyes open. You can't help but have a rooting interest. She's fine, but his performance is way off.
At the beginning, I was very, very distracted by Nick Nolte with an Italian accent. I got accustomed to it.
Oh, boy, not me.
It wouldn't have bothered me a bit if they decided to give him an American accent and not bother with that
He's
part
a real American
of the
actor.
true story.
Yeah, he's a real American actor.
Okay, coming up next, a film that's billed as the British version of The Big Chill. It's Kenneth Branagh's Peter's Friends.
We've just got the 3 days, Max. It would be nice to make it into the house at some stage.
Our next film has an impressive cast and director, but it's a big disappointment nonetheless. It's Kenneth Branagh's Peter's Friends, which accurately is being referred to as the British Big Chill, but it's not as good as that American film about former rebels reconsidering their lives during one long besotted weekend. The problem here is that everyone is just a little too clever to be believed. You can hear the lines coming off the screenwriter's word processor. Here in an early scene, the friends begin to reunite. Branagh plays the husband of an American TV star played by Rita Rudner.
Darling! Did you bring a surfboard?
No, that's just Carol.
Oh, ignore him. He's a monster. Hi.
Carol, it's a joyful gorgeosity. Oh, and what's all this then?
It's called a potbelly, Andrew. We have those in England, along with culture.
Be very careful with everything.
It's just too clever by a half. Another studied bit, Rudner is a binge purger obsessed about her weight.
What's that I smell?
That's what we're having for dinner. Cream of mushroom soup, roast beef and Yorkshire pudding, buttered carrots, sprouts, parsnips, mashed potatoes, and trifle.
Should I send for the ambulance now?
And then there's the sexual escapade as Peter's platonic friend, played by Emma Thompson, launches a midnight come-on.
Something all right?
Fill me with your little babies.
Oh, my God.
That's Stephen Fry as Peter, and his character, in fact, all of these characters made my skin crawl. I didn't believe in the reality of any of them. They all seemed precious. I didn't find their performances all that convincing either. I wanted some unpredictable moments, some dead patches, some real pain and humor, not a bunch of smart alecks. In short, I didn't like Peter or his friends.
Well, given the fact, Gene, that this is considered to be a comedy, I didn't really miss the dead patches or the pain. I enjoyed this movie as an entertainment. I thought the people were funny. I thought they were charming. I thought they had some funny lines of dialogue. I enjoyed their company. It's not intended, I don't think, to be insightful in the same way that The Big Chill is. It's a comedy and it's funny.
And it isn't, but if you're putting together a group of characters, Roger, and we're going to, this is a 10-year reunion, and they're getting together, then there has to be some point to it. And I thought it was more than just sitcom material, because that's all that's here, and it didn't have the credibility of sitcom material.
Well, you're missing the whole plot involving what Peter has done with his life and how Vera, the housekeeper, really cares about him and is disappointed.
Well, now you're saying there are some
of course
patches.
There are some very interesting things, and at the end there's a reason why they're all together, too.
But I think that they are not believable, not a single one of them.
Well, I believe them. When we come back, our video pick of the week, a bestseller created entirely on computers.
Siskel and Ebert's Video Pick of the Week, brought to you by Orville Redenbacher, the first and last name in popcorn.
Now it's time for our weekly video selection, and my pick this week is a current national bestseller on tapes and laserdiscs called Beyond the Mind's Eye. It's a selection of state-of-the-art computer animation with music. Images like this glistening metallic robot that remind us of mainstream movies like Terminator 2. One day, computers will be able to create entire movies, and the visual possibilities are breathtaking. Look at where this shot takes us. Beyond the Mind's Eye has a musical score by Jan Hammer and 12 animated sequences ranging from the abstract to the surprisingly real. Some of the sequences suggest the possibilities of virtual reality that developing technology where computers will take over your eyes and ears and transport you to other times and places. It's quite a trip, and it's my video recommendation this week. Now let's take another look at the movies we reviewed on this program. 2 thumbs up for Danny DeVito's Hoffa with a strong, abrasive performance by Jack Nicholson. 2 thumbs down for Trespass, the treasure hunters held hostage. It just wasn't convincing. A big disagreement on Chaplin. Gene admired Robert Downey Jr.'s portrait of the comic genius, and so did I, but I thought the movie was tabloid stuff. 2 thumbs up for the powerful drama Lorenzo's Oil, although Gene felt Nick Nolte's Italian accent didn't work. I agreed, but I was eventually able to accept it. A split vote on Peter's Friends. I enjoyed the laughter and truth-telling of their reunion. Gene thought the characters were phony, and so Hoffa and Lorenzo's Oil is a movie that, for a lot of people, is going to be a real strong experience.
And I think you're right to praise Susan Sarandon. She right now is at the top rank of American actresses on film. That's it for this week. Next week we'll be back with our year-end look at the best films of 1992. That's next week. And until then, the balcony is closed.